Hello and welcome to Speaking Spirit, where we talk about all things spiritual. Your host, John Moore, is a shamanic practitioner and spiritual teacher. And now, here's John.
Hello, everybody. Hello. I will say good morning again this time. I'm doing this one in the AM. And if you listened to my last episode, it was, I had a lot of fun. I interviewed a good friend of mine who is an animal communicator. And so if you've missed that one, that's a good one to go catch. And Jody is a lot of fun and very energetic. She gets me energized talking to her, and it was a good one. Today, I'm going to go back to talking about my roots. I'm going to talk about shamanism, and I'm going to talk about specifically about shamanic healing for chronic illness. So if you have a chronic illness, if you know someone who has a chronic illness, if you're interested in chronic illness, this will be a good episode for you. And I'm going to go through kind of the ins and outs. I'll talk a lot about shamanic healing. I'll talk about why it's a good, it's good especially for chronic illness, and why, a lot of people do, go see a shaman or shamanic healer for help with a chronic illness. So that's what we'll talk about today. I hope we're all doing well as I speak to you from here. And I know that I have listeners in Eastern Europe. I see that. I have listeners in Russia and Ukraine, Poland, Moldova, lots of other places in Eastern Europe. And I just, we're in the middle of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. My heart absolutely goes out to the people of Ukraine, especially, who are under horrible conditions. They're 1.5 million refugees. If you're the kind of person who wants to do something to help, I really suggest finding like the Ukrainian Red Cross or somebody like that who's helping out the refugees who are being displaced by this horrific war. And people in Russia I feel for as well, because I see that they are being misled about what's going on. And even the Russian soldiers, when they get into Ukraine, many of them have no idea what they're doing there. Many people in Russia have friends and family in Ukraine and consider Ukrainians their brothers and sisters. So this is not a war between people, between the people of Russia and the people of Ukraine. This is a horrific action taken by a dictator, and they're doing everything they can, from propaganda and everything else, to really cover up what's going on to the people in Russia. So if I speak about this and you can hear this inside of Russia, well, I guess I haven't been censored there. And then maybe that might not happen because I'm just a little old podcaster from the U.S. But my heart goes out, and what often happens with natural disasters and things like this is there will be groups of shamanic practitioners kind of all over the world doing spiritual work to do what we can to help people, provide spiritual support, beyond the physical support. And I've donated to humanitarian causes there personally, and if you can, it's such a great thing. I have folks I know in Poland, for example, who are, taking money out of their own pocket and going to the, grocery store and filling up baskets of hygiene products and socks and that sort of thing, and sending them to the border for these refugees. It's just amazing to see how these refugees have not been turned away. and they've been taken in, and nobody is saying, oh, gee, how we can't afford to take care of these people. I have not heard anybody say that. So it's just amazing to me, and I think about that living in the United States, which is the wealthiest country in the world, and very often we have folks here who think we can't afford to take care of other people, and we just need to look at what's going on to see that that is absolutely not true. We can, and we should, because human beings are human beings. And we are all deserving of more love, not less. And we are all deserving to have our physical, emotional, spiritual needs met. All of us. So, I'm not getting political. This is apolitical. I'm just speaking from a humanitarian perspective. It breaks my heart to see what's going on. Families torn apart, people's homes being destroyed. War is not glorious or wonderful or beautiful, or we do lots of things to pump up war. We write songs about it, and we glorify it, but it's not so glorious. And this is not to take away anything from the brave people who are fighting to protect their country and themselves and that sort of thing. They're not doing it for the glory, they're doing it for survival. And that's something to remember. So let's talk about shamanism. Let's talk about using shamanic healing for chronic illness. And the first thing I want to say is, personally, obviously, I believe in spiritual healing. I am a spiritual healer. I do shamanic healing. I see clients. I teach shamanic healing. I have full confidence. I have seen amazing things. I've experienced amazing things. I've healed myself. But I want to say that I don't believe that shamanic healing, or really most or any form of alternative healing, is a replacement for medical care. So if you have a chronic condition, or you have something that you don't know about, go see your doctor, and then, if you're so inclined, see a shamanic healer to help in the healing process. And I will talk about why that is. So many times people come to me for a healing, and what they want is instantaneous, miraculous healing. They want whatever it is, whatever dis-ease or illness, they want it to go away. And who doesn't, right? Who doesn't want that to go away? And, I tell them, look, if I were capable of instantaneously taking away everybody's illness, first of all, I would. I'd be out there doing that. Second of all, there would be no need for doctors or medicine or anything like that. So the way that I like to describe how spiritual healing, particularly shamanic healing, works, and I'm going to get into much more detail in this podcast today, is that it creates these spiritual conditions under which you can heal, or under which it makes it easier for you to heal. So if I were to break my arm, I would go to the hospital and have a doctor x-ray my arm, and they would probably set the bone and then put a cast on my arm. The setting of the bone and the cast are not healing my arm. They are creating the conditions under which my arm can heal properly. They're holding the bone in place, and it is my bone that heals itself. And the same is sort of true for shamanic healing or any other kind of spiritual healing, whether you go to Reiki or integrative energy therapy or whatever type of healing, angelic healing, faith healing. And I believe strongly in these things. I believe that we are a spirit that has a soul, that has a body, and has a mind. And all of these things overlap, interpenetrate, touch, react to each other. So when you address the spirit, when you address the soul level healing, you create conditions that make it easier for the body to heal. Just like if you address the mind, you can make conditions better for the body to heal. And there's a ton of research showing that things like hypnosis and meditation work for things like pain control and inflammation, including, there's studies on meditation working to help people with irritable bowel syndrome, for example, right? Because the body and mind are not really separate, and nor is the spirit, the body, and the mind really separate things. They're overlapping, and you can't draw a clean line between where one thing ends and another thing begins. You cannot, a lot of people think of their mind as in their brain, but we now know that, even on a physical level, most of our neurotransmitters are generated in our gut. And, the gut is one brain. It has, neuropeptides in all of the cells, and all of these things contributes to our thinking. So with shamanic healing, what we're doing frequently is creating the spiritual conditions under which the body can heal. And it's tough to tell me, it's tough for me to tell you exactly how that happens, because every session is different and every practitioner is going to work slightly differently. There are a multitude of ceremonies I can perform for a client, and I'll walk you through how a shamanic healing session might work. And, I always start out with what's called the diagnostic journey to determine what work would be most beneficial to the client on that day. So very frequently people come to me and ask for something specific, such as a soul retrieval. Soul retrieval is a shamanic treatment for trauma, for example. And everybody has trauma on some level. We don't get through life without having traumatic experiences of some kind. And so a lot of people come to me and specifically ask for soul retrieval. And what I tell them is, soul retrieval might very well be something that we do today, but I'm going to journey, and I'll explain what that is. I go into an altered state. I do some diagnostic work. I work with my helping spirits. They tell me the work that's going to be done that day, and it might be soul retrieval. Frequently, there's other things that have to come first before soul retrieval. One example that's really common is a shamanic extraction. And a shamanic extraction is just meant to remove blockages from the energy body. So we all walk through the world, and we get energy that doesn't belong to us kind of stuck in our energy system. And it can kind of gum things up and prevent us from healing. It can block, this happens on the level of the energy body, or you might call it the etheric body. For example, I've had clients come to me, and one of the things that they complained about was having a frozen shoulder. And in Journey, I can see what looks like some big mass of energy there, and I work with my helping spirits to remove that mass of energy. And the client I was working with had improved reduction in pain and an improved range of motion almost immediately. So that was actually sort of being caused by the intrusion, but the intrusion was also preventing the shoulder from healing itself, because we need our energy body, and this is what acupuncturists do, right? They affect the meridians using needles or moxa or other methods that I may be unfamiliar with. I've had acupuncture. I'm not an expert in acupuncture. And so there is healing on the level of the energy body that can happen, that can sometimes have to happen before some other work is done. And there's all kinds of work that I do with clients, everything from ancestral and past life healings to curse removal to power animal retrieval. Extraction and soul retrieval, pretty common, because we all walk around and get this crappy energy stuck to us, and most people have repercussions from trauma that they've experienced in their life. Even if you didn't have even if you didn't go to war, have extremely adverse childhood experiences, you have been afraid for your life at some point, or almost got into a car accident, or had surgery, or gotten an injury, or any of these things can cause soul loss. Or you've been in a mentally, emotionally abusive relationship, and that definitely can cause soul loss as well. It happens over time usually. So again, shamanic healing is not meant to replace medical treatment or therapy or medicine that you're taking or surgery or anything like that, but it can help create the conditions. Sort of the same thing. If I take an antibiotic because I have an infection, the antibiotic helps my body fight off the infection, right? So if I do spiritual work, I'm helping your spirit help your body repair itself, fix itself, fight off an infection, fight off cancer, fight off what have you. And the results are people usually feel better, have some results immediately after a shamanic healing. But with shamanic healing, the full results often take time to integrate. Particularly with soul retrieval, I tell people that you need to wait 5 or 6 weeks. If you want another session, please wait 5 or 6 weeks before booking another session. And if you book it with me, I won't let you book another session within 5 or 6 weeks, because it takes time to integrate that. Sort of like if you go to the hospital and get your cast put on for a broken arm, you have to leave that cast on for 4 to 6 weeks. If you take it off too soon, you're not going to heal properly. So it's kind of the same thing, right? We create the conditions under which the soul essence can return. We bring it back, and you might have to do some work to integrate. And that is another aspect of shamanic healing that some people miss, is that frequently there's work for the client to do after the session. Frequently there's integration work or something else. I will get homework assignments from my helping spirits to give to my clients. You need to meditate every day, or you need to take a break, or you need to do this, or you need to do that, or not need to, but they're recommending that you do this. And if you want to integrate this work, here are some things you can use to do that. So let's talk a little bit about chronic illness specifically. So there are lots of different types of chronic illness, obviously. People have autoimmune disorders, people have cancer, people have, chronic infections such as Lyme disease, which is, Lyme disease is really, really insidious and comes with co-infections, comes with parasitic co-infections, and can really, it's, really frequent. I know lots of people, particularly up here in Maine where I am, who have chronic Lyme, and it can be life-threatening, it can be debilitating, all of these things. So, people have these conditions, and some, they understandably, they're looking to do whatever they can to heal, right? And so people might see a naturopath and a dietitian and, a medical doctor, and go on certain medications and go on supplements and do all kinds of things. And I think that is a good idea, as long as things are not competing or contradicting or contraindicated, right? Contraindicated. They, I like to do everything. when I'm healing myself from something, when something's going on, and this is how I got into shamanism, to heal myself. I'll do shamanic healing, and I might see, depending on what it is, I might see a massage therapist and do meditation and talk to my doctor, and if they prescribe medication, take that, and take some supplements that will help, right? Because I want to give myself the biggest advantage I can. I want to use everything, every angle that makes sense for me to use, obviously without going broke or anything like that. So when you approach a shamanic practitioner, a shamanic healer for healing, everybody, just so so that if this is something you're interested in, or something you are helping somebody with, so every practitioner works a little bit differently, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that shamanism is a path of direct revelation, so people have different helping spirits that they work with for different things. Their methodology for doing different things is very, very different. So, so a typical healing session, and I'll talk about what from my perspective. Again, it's hard to describe what's typical, but, I'll give you my experience and what my clients experience, both from, if you happen to see somebody in person. During the pandemic, I stopped seeing clients in person because shamanic healing does not have to happen in the same room. It's not like Reiki or something where you're putting your hands on somebody and transferring energy to them. It's different. And so I see clients over Zoom primarily, and that works really well. And even, I know shamanic practitioners who, even prior to the internet being a really big thing, we're taking clients over the phone. So not even seeing them over video, and, I have people I know who have phone clients, who have had phone clients for years, who have never seen or met these clients. So, a lot of people contact me and they're specifically looking for in-person healing. In-person healing really works for me. And that, it's fine. That's a preference. You just need to understand that that's a preference, and it actually means, nothing. There's nothing about the effect of shamanic healing that's reduced by seeing somebody remotely. I do personally prefer to be looking at somebody over video when I'm working with them, so I can see the expressions on their face and they can see the expressions on my face, and it makes communication easier. And when I'm holding space for them while they're telling me what's going on with them, I think they can feel that more. But it doesn't change if I'm in the room with somebody. And the thing is, so I have clients all over the world. I have students all over the world. And that just wouldn't be possible if I had to see everybody in person. I have clients in lots of different countries and lots of different states in the U.S. And it's not really a big deal. So when you go to book an appointment with a healer, people approach things from a different perspective. And so I'm going to talk about some of the things that I've seen, that I've experienced, and the way that I the way that I do things. Some practitioners will allow you to set up a kind of a pre-call. Like if you're a first-time client, they'll set up like a 20-minute conversation with you either over the phone or with a Zoom to gather more information, to answer your questions, to make sure that shamanic healing is right for you. I don't generally do that. I generally just answer the questions over email. People can get everything they need if they need links or something to look up information. And part of that is I'm too busy to be doing too many of those. And B, I find it unnecessary. And C, sometimes I don't want too much information going into a session. Always talk to a client, want a little bit of information. Why are they coming to me? What are they doing? If somebody has some sort of chronic illness, I want to make sure that they're still, even if they feel great after the session, that they're not going to discontinue any treatment without speaking to a doctor. And then we're not replacing medical care with shamanic healing. Shamanic healing by itself was done when there weren't doctors, right? So in cultures where there weren't doctors, and the spiritual aspect was combined with other things like plant medicine, herbology, depending on the culture, massage and body work, long-term psychological counseling, vision quests, like all kinds of things. When in the modern ages, in today's world, most of the time that's not going to be your experience. You're going to have, a 90-minute to 2-hour session with somebody. And, unless they do something else like herbology or something, and I try not to combine modalities too much. So I'm a certified hypnotherapist. I'm not going to do hypnotherapy during a shamanic healing session. Not to say a client might not enter into a trance, but that's not specifically what I'm doing. I'm not doing hypnotherapy during that time because I like a really clean division. And I understand people do combine things. I have, I have friends who combine shamanism with other things, and that's totally fine. But I keep making this point, but it's really important that this is not meant to replace whatever medicine, supplementation, diet, therapy that you're doing. For mental health stuff, it's not meant to replace talk therapy either. I'm a big fan of combining talk therapy with shamanic healing. And when I have clients who come to me with a diagnosed mental health condition, I always check in with them and say, I want to make sure you're doing therapy, and if you've been prescribed medication, you are keeping up with that. And I really would prefer if you talk to your therapist first before we had a session. And if there are any questions, this just came up recently where somebody wanted a healing session for some diagnosed mental health condition. And I'm like, okay, are you're taking your meds, and you're talking to a therapist, and can you talk to your therapist about if your therapist thinks it's a good idea for you to be doing shamanic healing? It is safe for most people. There are some there's some exceptions. Once in a while, I will have somebody who has some kind of, and I'm not a mental health professional, so I may be describing this incorrectly, but some sort of psychosis, some sort of like paranoid schizophrenia or something like that, where they're not in touch with reality. And shamanic healing, there's a potential to open them up more or make things worse, or not treat, like they might have some idea about what's going on with them that is not borne out by shamanic healing. I've had people tell me that Greek gods were attacking them in their sleep and they needed me to stop them, and things like that. And I will communicate and say, okay, I need to know if you've ever been diagnosed with a mental health condition and if you're on medication. And sometimes I'll find that people have stopped taking their medication. And on the one hand, I understand that because these things do have really big side effects. But on the other hand, I feel like it would be irresponsible for me to replace medication in somebody's life. Not that I necessarily could, and not that I couldn't necessarily provide a benefit to somebody. But I don't want them thinking, okay, I'm going to be totally fine if I go off my meds as long as I get shamanic healing. Just irresponsible, and people's safety is always my number one concern, and it should be for any healer. And every healer should make sure your safety, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, is number one. So I do explain that to people who contact me that have conditions, and I need to make sure. So some practitioners will have a questionnaire for you to fill out. Sometimes it's a pretty lengthy questionnaire. Again, this is normal for some people, so that in and of itself is not a big deal, not a red flag in and of itself, so to say. If you go to a practitioner and say, "Oh, I've got an intake form," I don't at the moment have an intake form. Again, my information is going to come from our conversation. The other thing is that people sometimes balk at filling those things out if they are too. First of all, filling a form out online sometimes feels like maybe losing some insecure information or something like that. I understand that, and that's usually how it's done. It's usually an online form these days, and sometimes they're long, complicated, asking really personal information, which you should be comfortable discussing personal information with a practitioner. So if you're not, discuss that with them. I always start a session by telling, at least the first session I have with a client, by telling people that, my disclaimer about this not replacing medicine, and B, that everything they say to me is confidential, because I'm not a medical practitioner, so I'm not under regulations to hold things confidentially, but it's very important to me that my clients feel safe, feel safe sharing whatever they feel like they need to share with me. And the only way that can happen is if I create a safe container with confidentiality. And so you'll notice that once in a while I will speak in really general terms about clients. Like I had a client who came to me with this, and no personally identifying information whatsoever. In no way could anybody connect anything I'm saying to any of my clients. Sort of, I treat it sort of like a doctor who come and say, "Oh, I had a patient today who did X, Y, and Z," but doesn't give the patient name or gender or age or where they live or anything like that out. And so I'm the same, and most practitioners are the same. And I would ask about it. I would ask, if they are not really forthcoming about confidentiality, and I absolutely am, because I want to set people at ease from the very beginning. I want people to feel really comfortable with me. And that's part of the healing, right? If I'm nervous about, gosh, I can't share anything with this person. The other thing is, I may ask probing questions, but when people say I'm not comfortable talking about that, that's fine. It's okay. And I've had somebody like, okay, you have some sort of condition. What's going on? What caused you to contact me? And they'll say, well, I don't want to tell you too much stuff up front because I want to get your honest, like unbiased opinion about it. And that's fine too. Because honestly, the sharing part is not for me to necessarily get as much information as I can. It's nice to have a little bit of information so I have some direction when I'm working with people. But the sharing, so here's a secret, the sharing is part of the healing. Talking about somebody who is compassionately holding sacred space for you, non-judgmentally, and who has your best interest at heart, that is part of the healing. That's part of it. I know it's a secret, right? People don't talk about that. Because I'm not a therapist, I can't talk about doing talk therapy. But we know, when you talk to friends about something, when you talk to somebody who's trusted, when somebody holds you in a non-judgmental space and you can just let down your guard for a bit, be vulnerable, describe what's going on. The other thing I will, I'll talk to people about sometimes if it seems appropriate is very often during shamanic healing, emotions come up. They can be all kinds of emotions. I've had people bust out into laughter. I've had people break down and cry. I've had people feel extreme anger and everything else in between. And I always tell people everything that comes up is fine. I don't want you to hold it back. If you feel like crying, cry. If you feel like laughing, laugh. If you want to yell at me and call me names, I can take it, and that's totally fine. What I don't want people to do is, when they have emotion come up, to push it down, to hold it back. That is not healing. The emotion wants to come up and out so it can pass through. It is energy that wants to pass out of you, wants to be expressed in that moment. And that is another thing that good shamanic practitioners are good at, is holding space with compassion and empathy, different than sympathy, right? Empathy is, I can feel for you and I can understand things from your perspective. Sympathy is, oh, you poor baby, that must be so hard. Sympathy is about pity, and that is not empowering, and that doesn't make people feel good in the long run. So good shamanic practitioners have a background in empathy, and they're not just faking it. How do I put this in a way that's respectful? I've met some people in the spiritual healing world, and I won't get specific about who or whatever. And I have gotten the impression that they are faking the empathy, that they are actually not really capable of being empathetic too much, especially towards other human beings. Some people are great with animals and not so great with people. And you really got to be both to be good in this line. I'm having a little sip of coffee, so excuse me for just a second here. It's delicious. I'm a little bit of a coffee snob. Not too much, not like, I make my own coffee at home, but I'm very particular about the coffee I use and how I make it and that sort of thing, because I just have this little, it just a little joy that I'm grateful for every morning when I have my coffee. And when I get together with my girlfriend, we have coffee together, and it's like a little ritual for us that is just absolutely lovely. And I really enjoy it. So coffee is meaningful for me. I'm going off on a tangent. So back to healing chronic illness, or going to, shamanic healing for chronic illness. So I mentioned in the beginning that very often people want or expect instantaneous miraculous healing. And again, if I or any practitioner were capable of doing that 100% of the time, we would. And somebody who could do that, if they were the only person who could do that, would be a billionaire, first of all, but would be very highly in demand. There would be lines out the door. But it's not really how it works, right? And I've described how we're creating the conditions under which someone can heal. So I want to talk a little bit about what a shamanic healing session is like. And I've got YouTube videos describing this and all kinds of stuff. And as I've said, everybody's going to do it a little bit different. So I'm going to describe what happens if you have a shamanic healing session with me, whether it's for chronic illness or something else. So, you would get in touch with me, you'd make an appointment, I would send you, it's our first time, I would send you some information about how to prepare best to get the most out of the session. So, it'd be things like, make sure you've got 2 hours where you'll be undisturbed, preferable to be in a quiet location that is comfortable for you. Have things available for your comfort. So, pillows, a comfy chair, blankets, whatever you need to be physically comfortable for a couple hours. I remind people, or recommend that people have, like some water to drink, or if they get lightheaded when they get hungry, to have something, have whatever they need. And, I usually tell people it's a good idea to have a notebook and a pen handy, because I might give them some instruction, right? Something to do afterwards, or there might be something they're like, oh, I want to remember that and write that down. Okay. So then on the day of the appointment, we'll meet. And so shamans work in what's called a shamanic journey, which from the outside is an altered state of consciousness, meaning, for me, I close my eyes and drum. For other practitioners, they might use a recording of drum music. They might use dance. They might use some, indigenous cultures use plant medicine, so psychoactive medicines. I don't do things that way. First of all, it's not legal where I live. And second of all, I don't want to lose control, where if you take ayahuasca or peyote or psilocybin or something, it lasts for however long it lasts, and you can't come down from it voluntarily. So I use drumming to drive a specific state of mind. And so I always begin with what's called a diagnostic journey, and that's where I go in. And, after we talk, we'll talk for a while in the beginning, and then I'll say, okay, I'm going to do this diagnostic journey, and then I'm going to come back and we're going to talk about the work that we're going to do together today. So the diagnostic journey is meant for me to communicate with my helping spirits and find out what work makes the most sense for that client that day. Then they come back, we have a conversation. This is, this, and this. I saw this. I might get some information about things they can do, that kind of thing. And then I'll tell them, we're going to do this ceremony today, or we're going to do these 2 ceremonies today, or, whatever is indicated. And then I do the work. Then I do the ceremonies, which I always do in Journey. And after each one, I come back and I have a conversation with the person, tell them what went on, also ask them what they experienced, because sometimes people have visions or they feel sensations or something, and it's important to process through that stuff. And sometimes they give me more information to ask about in the next journey. Like, oh, I saw my deceased grandmother and she told me to ask about X, Y, or Z. Okay, well, I'll do that. So then I'll do another piece of work. So I do all the work that is to be done. We talk a lot in between each journey. And then we do a wrap up in which I just, go through everything that we did, answer any questions, let people know what's going to happen next, anything about integration, anything about homework, that kind of thing. After that, within about 24 to 48 hours, I will type up a recap of the session and email that to whoever, so that they have a rundown. If they didn't capture notes or anything like that, they'll have that. That will include any instructions for them. And it also includes an open invitation to contact me by email at any time if any questions arise. And then I'll usually, depending on the work that was done, follow up in another couple weeks, just with an email checking in. For people who are going through treatment for chronic illness and using shamanic healing, and even for some people who are not, very frequently you will want to have more than one session. So I really recommend for people to check in with themselves, and then check in with me by email, say what's going on, ask if I think another session would be a good idea. I don't sell people things they don't need or that I don't honestly believe would be helpful for them. It's not why I do this. I'm not trying to make people dependent on me or, that sort of thing. Some practitioners have whole things set up where you can buy packages of healings, 5 healings at a time, and get a discount and all of that stuff. I don't do that for a couple of reasons. One, I don't want to manage that. I just rather have people pay me when they book an appointment, and I know if something's in my calendar, it's already been taken care of, and I don't have to, track people down and say, hey, you paid me, but you haven't booked an appointment yet, or, you bought a package of 5 and you only done 3, and then 10 years down the road, they come back. Anyway, just logistically, it's a headache, but also, how do you know how many sessions you're going to need or want? Right? So maybe you have 3 sessions in the next year. Maybe you have 5 sessions in the next year. Maybe you only have 1 and never need to come back. And so what do you do at that point? Do you ask for a refund? Do you, I don't know. But, I'll say that it is it's something I see more and more people offering packages of things. And if you do have a chronic illness, the chances are you're going to want to see a practitioner more than once. And so if you can save some dollars, by booking, buying a package of sessions, and that appeals to you and the practitioner appeals to you, I think that's fine. I don't think there's anything unethical going on there, from that alone. Unethical shamanic practitioners are fairly rare. I won't say they don't exist, because I know that not to be true. There are practitioners. One in particular, I won't say this person's name or anything, but there was somebody that I have worked with in the past and have referred people to that I will not anymore because of some ethics issues. So ethics are really, really, really important, particularly in spiritual healing, absolutely in medicine and psychotherapy, but absolutely true in spiritual healing as well. You don't need people. You don't need your shamanic healer, bad mouthing you to other shamanic practitioners or posting stuff about you on their Facebook or, something along those lines. And that's so rare. And very frequently when people do goofy, bad stuff like that, they get called out by the community. So, often I will refer people to other practitioners if they need something that I can't provide them. And that is, another way that I focus on being ethical. So if you come to me for something that I don't specialize in or that I've never done or something along those lines, I would rather find somebody who is more, who's going to give you what you need, rather than taking your money and have you not have the best experience possible. Again, it's not, I do charge for sessions. I have to charge for my time, but I don't, it's not 100% of the reason that I do this. And if it were, that would be the wrong motivation. Most practitioners I know do this because they love it. They do it because working with people is very enriching and very rewarding, not just talking financially. There are people who make significant money in shamanism. They tend to be very well-known teachers who charge thousands and thousands of dollars for seminars and things and have all kinds of certification programs and stuff like that. And that's different. That's different than seeing clients. But, expect to pay. There's this weird thing where every once in a while I run into, nobody should ever charge for anything spiritual. And that's great, but I don't know where that comes from. I don't know why that is a thing. Why, what holy book or spiritual entity came down with that? We live in the modern age, and the reality is I have a house to pay for, and I have kids, and I have a car that I don't drive a whole lot, but I have to pay for insurance, and when I do drive it, pay for gas, and I have to pay for electricity. And the service that you're listening to this podcast, that serves up this podcast, charges me monthly. And if I could live in a hut on the edge of a village and have the entire village take care of my every physical worldly need, provide food for me, provide shelter for me, if I didn't need money, if they took care of my kids, that would be one thing. But we don't live in that world. And I've spent more time studying shamanism than most people have studying something that they have a PhD in. So I have put significant time, effort, and money into the skills and knowledge that I have. And when I see a client, I spend 2 hours with them, and that's 2 hours that I'm not doing something else. And for me to have that 2 hours where I'm not, working in another job or teaching a class or doing something, that is feeding my family. I don't know why feeding my family is seen as some evil thing, but trust me, my family likes to eat, and I don't think that's evil at all. And likewise, when I have gotten readings from people, when I have taken classes from people, when I have gotten healings from people, there is always an exchange. Okay, so a lot of people who are, nobody should charge for anything spiritual, and I should be able to go to a meditation class and not pay for it. It's wonderful. It's great if people can do that. And they're like, I can go to any church. And that's true, you can. And then the churches have to pass the collection plate, and you have to put money in it, or the church loses their building and you can't go to that church anymore because they don't exist. It's just the world that we live in. I can't, and I have in the past, I have traded with other practitioners, and once in a while I'll do that. But most people want to trade something that is not something I can use, or, that sort of thing. So sometimes people will ask me for trade, and I just can't. So my recommendation is, if you have something to trade, go sell that to earn the money that you need for shamanic healing, and there shouldn't be, the time should be the same. If it's a service that you're providing or something like that, the time's going to be the same. You're just using money to make the exchange between people. So, expect to pay for shamanic healing, and we can't take insurance, unfortunately, or even any sort of state or federal healthcare benefit. And for now, I don't think flex spending accounts or anything like that will comp shamanic healing. So, unfortunately, we have to, most of us have to charge. I would say pretty much all of us. And the whole idea that, traditional shamanic healers didn't charge is 100% hogwash. Completely wrong. There are cultures that did not traditionally use money, but if you went to a medicine man, you sure as heck paid tribute and brought gifts that were the equivalent of paying somebody. Whether you brought them tobacco or alcohol or chickens or whatever it was, there was an exchange. Spiritually, exchange is important. If you're in a position where you're always just taking stuff, first of all, psychologically, you're not appreciating what you're getting as much as you would be if you had to do something to earn it, if you had to sacrifice something to earn it. The other thing is, as a spiritual healer, I only have so much to give before I run out of energy and steam. And I can tell you, I am exhausted after doing a healing session. And I might do multiple sessions a day. I know people who have done, up to 4 or 5 a day. I cannot imagine that. The most I would do is like 3 in a day, just because it's just too much. It's just so much energy, and I put my all into it. And there's prep that I've done, and not to mention the years of training and experience that you're getting from me. So it's not just the service, you're paying for the experience, right? And the expertise, and all the work that I have done to build relationships with the helping spirits that I have. So I do, if shamanic healing appeals to you and you have some kind of chronic illness, I do recommend it, and I do recommend it in conjunction with everything else you're doing. And you should be able to reach out to a practitioner and ask questions and make sure you're comfortable with the answers. You should be able to ask them about their training. Who did they train with? How long have they been practicing? What types of ceremonies do they typically do? They might not be able to list all of them. I probably couldn't. But there are a few that are very common that, I could talk about, and, should be able to. Nobody should diagnose you or recommend anything from initial contact, from just like an email. Somebody will send me an email and they're like, oh, I have this and this and I feel like I need soul retrieval. And I'm like, yeah, from what you're telling me, soul retrieval might be the thing that you need, but there could be other things as well. And I don't really know that until we work together and I do some diagnostic work and journey on your behalf. So while a soul retrieval might take place during that time, be prepared that there might be other things that have to happen first, or you might not be ready for soul retrieval yet. And that's okay too. I have had that happen from time to time, where somebody expected to have a soul retrieval and I'm like, not this time. But, then they came back and worked with me again and maybe had a soul retrieval. So, or they had a soul retrieval once and came back for another one and that wasn't indicated the second time. That has also happened to me. So, I hope this has been a little bit enlightening about shamanic healing. I didn't want to go into too many just like spiritual details, but I wanted this to be useful for people who are thinking about having, going to a shamanic practitioner to have healing work done, to understand what to expect, to understand what you should expect from somebody from an ethical standpoint. You can expect for somebody to refer you if they can't work with you, or if they're not the right practitioner for you, et cetera, et cetera. And you should be able to expect full confidentiality, and you should be able to expect somebody to be empathetic with you and not sympathetic. And then, find somebody who really matches what you're looking for. If you're looking for somebody who speaks to you warmly, then pay attention to that. If you're looking for somebody who is clinical and cold and by the numbers, and that's not a criticism. There's nothing wrong with that. That makes some people comfortable. And I understand that. That's not my style, but there are people for whom that is their style. But being comfortable having an emotional connection, a positive emotional connection with your shamanic healer is really good. So I am going to wrap things up. I hope this has been helpful. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast because I have new episodes coming out. Check out my YouTube channel as well. I have an app. Everything's on my website. Follow me on Instagram, Facebook. It's all there. And I share a lot of stuff in different channels. So I will talk to you real soon, and I hope you stay happy and healthy.
You have been listening to Speaking Spirit with your host, John Moore. For more info or to contact John, go to mainshaman.com. That's maineshaman.com.